Good morning and welcome to another episode of Bold Business. I'm David Grasso from GenFKD, a nonprofit dedicated to helping millennials understand money and entrepreneurship. Joining me today as my co-host is Sarah Hill, founder of Bookstr. What's up, Sarah?
Hi, not too much. I'm here. I'm alive. It's 9 a.m.
It's 9 a.m.
We're doing it.
We're doing it. And we have 9 minutes today to talk about headlines. Usually we're always in a rush.
Yeah.
We have some good headlines for you. Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's kick off the show with our first headline, which comes from Bloomberg.com and discusses the recent 6.1% decline in the value of shares of Snapchat. Snapchat lost $1.3 billion in market value following a tweet by Kylie Jenner, who said she doesn't open the app anymore. So, what do you think, Sarah? Do you open Snapchat?
No.
Neither do I. I stopped.
Yeah, I haven't. Like, I went through a breakup and we stopped sending those little, not nudes, but we stopped sending like texts, you know, the ghosting things. We stopped doing that. And then after that, I was like, this is done. There were so many features. And did you see the latest redesign? Because I heard so many complaints from friends, and it was right before the Jenner tweet.
I heard the redesign is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I did too.
I haven't seen it. Honestly, because I don't open it, and I used to open it a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you watch people's stories, or did you send?
No, I like the Snapchat Discover, which was the news feature, which is pretty amazing actually,
yeah,
and I'm sure that's still pretty good.
And I know like all the brands and stuff went on and did they all had like Snapchat strategies, and I'm so glad we didn't do that because.
Yeah, no. In fact, they grew their Snapchat teams. Then they called them all. It's been like the Snapchat massacre. I don't know. I feel like no one my age is on Snapchat. I'm also an older man.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, they kept saying like all the younger kids are doing Snapchat, and I was like, yeah, okay, they're all sending nudes or whatever they're using it for, and like
whatever they're using it for.
We know what they're using it for. We know what they're using it for.
They disappear. Oop, disappeared.
But now there's Instagram stories, and Insta stories is kind of taking the cake. It's
I watch your
so
Insta
easy.
story, Sarah. You watch mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, is that Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, has stolen Snapchat's lunch.
I know, and there's like a very notorious battle between Snapchat and Facebook because they couldn't get, like, Facebook wanted to buy Snapchat, and Snapchat was like, no, we're worth more than what you're giving us.
Now they're like, I kill you.
Yeah. So nasty. The Valley can get so nasty sometimes.
Well, anyway, those Snapchat bros are getting a little piece of karma. That's a story for another day. Our next headline comes from CNBC and highlights a new survey conducted by the financial services company Comment, which found that 41% of millennials would end a relationship for a promotion at work. About 1/3 of respondents admitted they'd be willing to stay single for 11 years, delay marriage for 7 years, and put it off having kids for 8 if it meant getting ahead at work. Surprising findings. We are horrible.
What's wrong with people?
We are horrible.
Oh my God.
And
it's like everyone's soul is just like done. They're like, I'm dead inside. I'm just a robot here to work.
I was reading this article and it said that people would break up with their partner for a $37,000 raise. I wouldn't break up with my partner for a $370,000 raise.
What are these people
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love money, but I mean, I feel like
for $30,000?
$37,000.
Come on. Like,
New York is like
That's
nothing.
That's not going to get you very
That's like a takeout food habit in a year here.
Seriously.
But
Jeez, start a lemonade stand instead and keep your relationship maybe or something like that.
How about you work hard and you'll get the promotion anyway? This whole idea that work and relationships are a zero-sum game, so if you invest in work, it's going to come at the expense of relationships, is bullshit.
I agree. Totally.
100%.
I totally agree. You know what's funny though is like I was thinking the other day, all of my relationships have ended at the same time as a job. So maybe there's a correlation there.
Oh my God, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're just, whoop, you're done. No job, no boyfriend, nothing.
I mean, if you think about it, like 1 out of 2 relationships are doomed to fail. So maybe the people already in failing relationships took the survey and they were like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and say, yes, I'll take that $30,000 or $40,000 now. Maybe.
I don't know. I think that survey might be flawed, or at least I'm hoping so, because, you know, what do you guys think out there? I mean, I would be pretty disappointed if someone broke up with me over money.
Think about your significant other. We'll do a visual exercise. Think about your significant other and then put a price tag of $40,000 right above their head. Would you take the money to have them removed?
All my exes, sure.
Yeah, your exes, but you're engaged now.
Yeah, I
so,
am
like,
engaged, so
hi, you
$40,000. I think I'd rather just have a side gig where I made $40,000.
Yeah, totally. Or maybe this was like all men who took the survey who were like, hey, I spend that by taking women out like on a yearly basis. So
Hopefully you're not right. Hopefully it's not gender biased, this survey. So anyway, before we get ourselves in trouble.
Anyway, romance is dead. That's, I think, our
Oh my God,
conclusion.
Sarah, I don't want to hear this. Okay, our third headline comes from Business Insider and talks about a recent increase in the rate of millennials buying homes. Finally,
Oh,
something positive.
Cha-ching.
According
Are they
to
living alone? Or?
According to Bloomberg, first-time buyers made up 38% of single-family home purchases last year, which is their biggest share in the market since 2000. Young Americans now own homes at a rate that hasn't been seen since 2014, with the rate of home ownership for Americans younger than 35 rising to more than 2/3 in the fourth quarter. We're moving back to the burbs, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want to nest? Speaking of romance,
Of
do you want
course.
the golden doodle?
Yeah.
The house in the
Yeah,
suburbs?
I mean, yeah.
The basement? The sunset?
I want to be like Joanna Gaines. I need a chip, really, you know?
I don't know. The
Do you
suburbs
think these are
sounds...
all flip houses that they're buying? Or?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, this is great news because people need homes and, somebody needs to live in the suburbs. I mean, I like the suburbs, but
Sure.
I personally like
You're a
being in the
city boy,
city. I'm
yeah.
a city boy.
You're a
Yeah,
city
yeah,
boy.
I'm a city.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of flip and flop. Like, I want to be in the city, but then I also, like, want a country house one day. I want a mountain house and a
That
beach
sounds
house.
expensive.
Very expensive.
You might have
Very,
needed
very
to take that
expensive.
$37,000 instead of being with your boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm working on that. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's a stunning statistic. I can't believe that people are actually doing that. They say that home ownership is a great way to invest your money. So maybe, I know a lot of millennials don't have 401k, so maybe they're like putting it into the housing market instead.
You are allowed to take money out of your 401k for your first home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Noted.
Uh-huh.
And sorry, but I just wonder if this is going to stop now that the tax rebate isn't for your first time home.
Everyone says rising mortgage rates and the tax law are going to screw housing. We really don't know yet.
Do you think this is going to be like a baby boomer thing, or like do you think it's going to be as big of?
Well,
big
baby
of a-
boomers are kind of done, Sarah. I mean, they're headed towards retirement, and we're almost middle age. So at this point, we need to buy homes.
Oh my God! Did you just say that?
Let's move to our last headline for the Wall Street Journal, which focuses on recent changes in our hospitals and how turning to technology could result in cheaper and better care. Some of the changes coming to the traditional hospital model include helping patients at home, building smaller facilities, finding new uses for old hospitals, reaching out to those at risk, helping people from afar, and making hospitals more efficient. While nobody expects hospitals to go away anytime soon, many healthcare providers are investing in outpatient clinics and other medical centers, which could be numbering the days of the traditional hospital as we know it.
Interesting. I wonder what they're doing with the old hospitals, like escape the room kind of thing.
I don't know. Have you been to an old hospital? They're kind of scary.
Yeah, they're really scary, like filming horror movies.
Do you remember going to hospital when I'm older than you, but when I was a little kid in the early 90s, the hospitals were pretty scary. This whole idea
Yeah.
of nice hospitals is something very recent.
Yeah, they're like hotels now, kind of, but they.
Oh, and they're
always been.
they're better. They're more expensive than the Ritz-Carlton, make no mistake.
Oh, for sure. But the thing is like when I think about it, and I know this is a little morbid, but like if I had to go, I would probably want to go like at home, not like in a.
Well, now you just went
place.
from hospital to hospice, Sarah. Little bit of a jump.
I'm just thinking out loud. That's what I would want.
I mean, hospitals are way too expensive. They're ripe for disruption, and I can't wait to see how things work when they face some good old-fashioned competition. That's why we have capitalism, and that's why America is what it is.
But do you think that you can get the same quality of care? Like, I don't imagine anyone being able to go like on their living room table and say, "Hey, I'm having a heart surgery later," and like a team of surgeons.
Okay,
are
listen,
coming
that's
here.
a bit of an extreme example.
Right.
Of course, we need to do heart surgery at hospitals.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff and regular stuff and preventative care that can prevent you from going to the hospital in the first place.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of our problems with healthcare come from hospitals.
Yeah.
And not practicing preventive, depending on who you ask, care.
Okay, all right, I'm buying it. I'm buying
Okay,
it.
I don't want to be in the damn hospital. In fact, when you go to the hospital, your risk for infection goes up like umpteen%.
Yeah, that's true too.
Because you're gathering all the sick people and concentrating them in one place.
Yeah.
So.
Oof. I just would hope, and I'm sure there's like many people thinking this through, but it's hard to imagine that you could get the same level of care because nurses, when you're sick or something's wrong, nurses are in and out all the time. So maybe if you have people coming in and checking on you, like nurses there, like living with you or something. You know, like there's so many emergency situations that happen in a hospital. It's hard to imagine planning for them in your home. But yeah, I do think it's right for disruption as well.
Well, anyway, enough about healthcare and enough of us yapping. Our first guest on today's show is Berger. She's an author and a speaker and is here to discuss how to stay motivated and living your purpose in 2018. Welcome to the show, Crystal.
Good morning, David. Sarah, how are you?
We're trying to live our purpose over here, Crystal.
Well, you guys are being quite purposeful because I think you guys have done one thing, and that's identify your gifts. That's the first step in being purposeful, for sure.
Really?
Yes.
Tell us more.
Yes. I mean, first you have to say, okay, well, who am I as a person? What are my natural strengths and abilities and gifts? It's something that we kind of know really early, right? Like, I'm sure you both were like the person at home as a kid, really, really entertaining the family at Christmas dinner, right?
For better or for worse.
And so it's those things that naturally come to us. You know, I knew very early that I wanted to be a writer. I used to write plays when I was in elementary school. I wrote my first book when I was in the 4th grade.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's one of those kinds of things where if you stay aligned with your gifts and your talents and identify that gift, that's the first step in being purposeful.
So I have a friend one time, she was like, Sarah, you're so lucky because you know what you're passionate about and what you want to do, but I have no idea what I'm even passionate about. They don't even know where to start. Like,
Yep.
What can you do? Like make a list of all the things that you're happy to do?
One thing that you can do is, well, one first step is to write things down, right? We know that people who are 42% more likely to achieve their goals if they write them down, right? So if
Evidence.
Yes, evidence, honey. Listen, evidence. Yes.
Hansel and Gretel. I'm gonna if I don't do this, I fail.
You better believe it. I mean, you're halfway there, you know? And so one thing is write it down, right? If you see it's something that people keep saying that you do really well, Sarah, or something that you might feel like, okay, this is like really dope for me, right? That's like the second thing that you can do to get on that track, right? To really figuring out, well, why am I here, right? A lot of times we run from those things that we know innately we do well because we want to do what's predictable. And that's the wrong way to go. I did 1,000 things before I decided to really pursue my hopes and my dreams, right?
What about like for you, for example, for writing, that's like not exactly a good way to get an income, or like sometimes you have to take a big risk with what your passion is or what your purpose is, right?
Yes, you definitely have to take risks, right? We know that risk is where you see the most reward, right? If you don't put yourself out there, then you cannot get there. For me, I remember being a little girl when my parents first divorced, and I was in the 7th grade, and I remember writing all the time about my feelings, my emotions, and everything that really meant a whole lot to me. And I realized that this is something I'm really good at. Then I started writing in the school newspaper, and then people started to ask me to write papers in college, and I was like, okay.
I did that.
And you made some good money. I'm sure you did.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, and you have to be resourceful. And the great thing about today, content is distributed in so many different ways. And so something like writing, you can really make money as a freelancer for a lot of different publications that you probably couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so we've identified the gift. What next? To living your purpose.
After you actually identify the gift, then you need to surround yourself with people that can sow into the gift, right? So I remember I was watching an interview with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett said clearly, he said, listen, I don't hang around people that can't sow any great seeds into me, right? He said, if you don't have friends that you can learn something from and you're the smartest person in your crew, you need to get a new crew.
Wow. That's so good.
Throwing some shade at our social networks. Okay.
That's good. That's really good.
Sarah has a lot of talents I don't, and she's in my crew.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, you have to really be true to who you are, right? I mean, because if you want to feel fulfilled, you want to feel purposeful, you have to do those things that come to you in your spirit, right? Those things that you dream about, and really figure out how are ways I can monetize this. The great thing about our world is that we have digital platforms now where we can just sell about anything. You get on Instagram, you can sell anything on Instagram if you package it right. And so you have to really figure out, how can I take these gifts, these strengths, these talents, these abilities, package them properly, and then put them out for the world to consume.
What about if you say you've spent 4 years in school, and then you go to law school, you got student loans, you're like, yeah, oh, really?
Let me tell you my story. So when I was 15 years old, there was a show that used to come on. It was called Teen Summit, right? And I fell in love with the fact that this teenage girl had a show on BET, okay? I knew I wanted to do it, ran from it. Went to law school, failed out of law school because I was not doing what I loved. When I looked around that law school, now mind you, I studied for that LSAT. I paid all that money, right? So failing out was not the thing that I wanted to do. That wasn't my goal, right? But I remember talking to my first year classmates, and they had come from generations of attorneys. They were passionate about constitutional law. And I was in constitutional law like, when am I going to go to the next event, right? And so I think that that kind of thing is that you have to really make a decision early to be true to who you are before you waste a lot of time, energy, and money. Now, would I do it all over again? No, because I made some great friends along the way. I have a great network. Everybody I know is an attorney because I was in law school with them, right? But I realized when I left law school that, Crystal, this is what you've been called to do. I wrote in my journal when I was 15 that I wanted to do that. And I remember coming home from Houston, Texas, reading my journal, and I read it in my journal that I want to be like the girl on BET, and I cried tears. And then I said, I'm going to do this. It's time.
That's amazing.
This woman is really a good guest. She's energetic and well-spoken, and Howard says you can't win if you don't play.
Come on now. Come on. You can't win if you don't play. And you have to have the mindset to win, right? Yeah. One of my favorite speakers, Willie Jolly, says you have to have the mindset to supersede the skill set. Anybody can have a talent, right, or a skill, but if you don't have the mindset to win, right, like there's nothing that I do that I say I can't fail, that I'm going to fail, right? Yeah. I'm going to go out, I'm going to make it happen, and nobody's going to tell me no. No for me is maybe. Maybe is yes. And yes is, oh, like, I'm going to get it all today.
I love this so much.
Thank you.
How do you have the energy when you wake up in the morning? When you wake up, what do you say to yourself that's like, I'm going to, like, no means maybe? How do you do that?
Because you have to know where you came from. You have to know what your true calling is and why you are here. I know that I'm here to serve people. I know I'm here to help people get to where they want to go. So even when I'm tired, I had a shoot in Washington, D.C. yesterday. I got on the train. I didn't get back until midnight. I'm here today in New York City doing this segment because this is what I was called to do. So sometimes you have to set yourself, okay, I'm going to go get my Starbucks. I'm going to drink a couple coffees of water, put on a little bit more concealer, and I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do this thing that I've been called to do because guess what? Your purpose makes you feel fulfilled. And so it doesn't really matter about the other things. When you're tired, you think about your purpose. Somebody's life is going to be changed by hearing my voice today. Somebody's life is going to be different. I'm going to be that person who says, oh my God, I failed out of law school, my life is over. And they hear my story and they're like, wow, well, if she did it, she overcame, so can I.
Amazing.
Crystal Berger, the Church of Crystal Berger, love it.
Take them to church, David. You got to take them to church.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So next on the show, we have Scott Gerber. He's a CEO of the community company and co-author of Superconnector, a book about building business relationships that matter. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Welcome. Congrats on the book.
Thank you. It's very exciting.
Like the cover, nice and yellow and bright.
I stand out, right?
For sure.
I see the connections, the lines going through everywhere. So stop networking. They always tell us network.
Well, you know, it's funny. I think that like every single platform that man has ever created and woman has ever created, by iteration 5, it's been fundamentally destroyed and discombobulated. You know, networking started with a great purpose, meet people, be able to build meaningful relationships. But with social networking and frankly, the tips gurus and MLM hucksters out there, changing networking into that icky, dirty, transactional thing that you feel like you need to shower afterwards. Exactly. You know, the guy that walks up to you at the conference is shaking your hand, talking past you, handing you a business card. So my partner and I, Ryan, wrote this book because we have fundamentally believed there is a better way. We work through the community company with, you know, thousands of C-level executives and entrepreneurs every day to better facilitate meaningful relationships through community building and empathetic thought and emotional intelligence, and not just, hey, let's go find a way to growth hack our way to this relationship, which is nonsense.
Yeah, I was going to ask while I was going through this, how do you know when you're networking and then like, how do you know when it's just using people?
Absolutely.
Like it just is so prevalent, especially in the startup community where it's like.
It's the glad-handing generation. You know, it's funny. I'm gonna give you a simple audit that I tell folks to do to determine if they're more of a networker or a connector. And so, you know, in order to know how you have to improve, you first have to know how much you potentially suck, right? Yeah. And so the audit is very simple. In the next 5 professional conversations that you do, that you've never met the person that you're talking to, I want you to consciously be thinking about the following. are you headed in a direction where you are saying, I want to ask this person another question because I'm curious? Or are you going another way, which is, this person is not helpful to me, so I need to end this conversation? What we find is that networkers are transactional short-term thinkers. They are trying to kill every single thing in front of them for a personal victory. It is like connecting the dots for personal fulfillment, personal success, versus connecting, which is more long-term. It's the idea that you're going to build a community of value for others, be habitually generous to those people, go deeper than surface level with those people. And there's just so many tells. I mean, again, usually you can tell if somebody's trying to network to you in 30 seconds or less. Usually starts with them talking about themselves before asking you anything relevant about who you are, what you do, what makes you excited to wake up in the morning. And so I think we can find a better way to simply be better at conversation. We call it the idea of being the Sherlock Holmes of discourse, right? To extract great context from people, to go deeper, to have little nuggets, personal things we learn about people that you can't find on LinkedIn, so that you can consistently try to find ways to help them in their daily pursuits or keep the conversation going long term to begin to build that longer term relationship.
Well, Sarah and I are a part of a group that help each other without exchanging money, and some people are quite confused by that.
I know, it's weird, but it's
weird.
like one of the best. It's one of the best groups I've ever had. Like this group of people that are surrounded by Bold. It's so nice.
Not we just help each other unprovoked.
And so you guys are the habitual givers that we talk about in the book. It's the idea that not every single thing needs to lead to this, dollar amount. In fact, profiting, again, in the networking world, profiting became a goal, and profit meant financial incentive. Whereas being a connector, if you look at some of the top connectors in business today, my partner and I started YEC, back in the early 2010s, because we genuinely wanted to surround ourselves with amazing people. And yes, naturally, that's allowed for smart asks and referrals to come inbound to help our professional pursuits. But it's because we were so thoughtful and not thinking about, hey, man, I'm going to go meet this guy, Jake, because he can advance my career. And I just think more people need to realize that if you are thinking more long-term, if you wake up in the morning and just are excited about talking to people and learning about people and being empathetic to people and being curious about people, your life is so much more fulfilling in general.
You get the last word, Sarah. Go ahead.
Can you ever be tapped out of connection?
The best connectors in the book, this is a fallacy, just like people assume, like me, like you are the extrovert, that is the connector, right? It's the extrovert that walks into the 5,000 person conference and comes out knowing everyone. That is actually a lie. The best connectors in the world are often introverts because they're more thoughtful in the way they engage, and they're more selective. I think that even extroverts, the best connectors in the world are people that are meaningful not only in how they speak and how they act with people, but who and how they surround themselves and where they spend their time. So they don't go to the 5,000 person conference. They might attend that conference, but curate 15 of the best people from that conference to a private, intimate, safe space oasis that they can be meeting people more thoughtfully. And so, yes, you should not be, like the message of this book is not go out and meet every single person and their mother and hope for the best. It's how do we be more thoughtful? How do we say no more often than yes when it comes to connecting? And just how do we live a life where we are surrounding ourselves with amazing people every day?
This is Scott Gerber, a Superconnector and author, incidentally, of Superconnector. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Absolutely. Next up, we have our weekly Bookstr segment. You can say this part.
Hey, yo, weekly Bookstr segment.
Bookstr is a website for book lovers and much more. And incidentally, the CEO is sitting next to me. Joining us today is Kumar Mehta, author of The Innovation Biome. Welcome to the show. We actually have a copy of the book.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for joining the Bookstr segment.
Thank you.
So why'd you write this book?
So I had a personal desire to help millions of lives and influence millions of lives in a positive fashion. And I thought that the only thing that's influenced lives in a positive fashion from the beginning of time are innovations, whether they're in technology or medicine or healthcare or anything. And there's so much misinformation about innovation that I took several months, maybe close to a year, to actually research and understand the very basic foundational elements of innovation. And I wrote the book with the guiding principle that when companies innovate, all of our lives get better.
Brilliant. So I have two questions from that, but one of them is, what company do you think right now is innovating the most?
I think probably Amazon, and not just because it's a home company, because I'm from Seattle, but I think that right now Amazon is probably the most important and influential company, and there are others as well. And one of the reasons is because Amazon has made innovation a priority. They have 500,000 employees, and every single one of them is allowed to innovate, allowed to share ideas. And if anyone shares ideas in a prescribed form that shows true customer obsession, that idea is reviewed. And thousands of these ideas are evaluated and reviewed at Amazon. And things that we use every day, like the Echo or the Kindle, or all of these things have just come out from people at Amazon who've thought of a different way or a better way to do things, and they've become innovations we use every day.
Yeah.
I mean, Amazon, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge customer of Amazon. Sometimes I feel
all
like they
are.
make business decisions that don't really make a lot of sense, but evidently, as we're learning, it's for the long game.
Right, exactly. And they've said it from day one. What Amazon has done and what I write about is that they've really altered customers' experiences. Every innovation from the beginning of time has altered experiences. And if you're able to focus on enhancing your experience with a customer and you enhance societal value, society will figure out a way to reward you. So for example, if you take Google, something we all use every day, Google didn't start off to make money in advertising revenue. It was an academic experiment, but they added so much value to society that society figured out a way to reward the company.
Interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So then do you need to start with your value proposition first?
Yeah, you could. I recommend that you start with any experience that's broken or any way that you can make an experience better. It's not about inventing something new. It's not about making a better phone or making a better camera. It's about the new experiences that are created when the two are on a single device. Mm-hmm. So focus on the experience, and it's something I call as the currency of innovation, the experience delta. It's the difference between how things are done versus how they can be done. And, I came to New York last night. If I came here maybe 8 or 10 years ago, just going from my hotel for dinner would have been a painful experience in going out and trying to find a cab in a rush hour. But that experience has completely changed because now I don't have to go look for a car with Uber and rideshare services. The car comes, looks for me.
So this is a good question. Can small companies be innovative too? Because you use Amazon and Google as examples,
Absolutely.
and they're very large.
Absolutely. In fact, innovation is, first of all, for the companies you just mentioned, their biggest competitors are probably some small companies, not each other. And that's, and all of these companies were small companies not too long ago.
Is that why they buy up a lot of small companies?
Well, that's a different question. They buy up a lot of small companies for different reasons, for technology, for people, for know-how, for a bunch of reasons. But to answer your question, innovation is now increasingly within everyone's reach. Everyone has access to the knowledge, the tools, the software, whatever you need for innovation, it's available somewhere in the world at a reasonable cost. And innovation is, the barriers have come down, so the value is no longer in the components that you have, it's in the experiences that you create.
So what inspired you to write this book?
I honestly wrote it because I think that when companies innovate, all of our lives get better. And I think if what I wrote this book was, I wasn't trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to educate the world in a sense as to how can we really get away from the hype of innovation or different elements or methodologies to what really, really drives innovation.
Were you just like sitting around and you were like, I just want to write this? Or
Pretty much. I'd built a business, I'd sold a company, and I wanted to do something that influenced millions of lives in a positive fashion.
I love it.
I did it through innovation.
So how can the government and how can public policy help support innovation in the private sector?
So you'll be surprised that a lot of the greatest innovations come from government-funded research. So if you take the iPhone, for example, an innovation we all use, just about every single component of the iPhone, whether it's the multi-touch technology, the technology behind Siri, whether it's HTML, whether it's the compression technology, whether it's the browser, whether it's all of these things have come from the government. What Apple did was take these things that were available to everyone, including you and me, and put them together in a beautiful package. The government spends more on R&D than any other organization, especially the U.S. government. And there's some brilliant work coming out of there, but it's up to us to take it and make a
where do
value out
you
of it.
find the work that they're doing?
That's more than an 8-minute segment, but but it's out there.
It's out there.
Like online or?
Yeah, you can find it. You can talk. You can talk to universities. You can get
Okay.
access to it.
So what is your recommendation for someone who wants to be an innovator? Because it's not easy. A lot of people will tell you your idea is super dumb and that you have no business innovating.
That is what you mentioned is one of the biggest inhibitors of innovators is other people thinking that your idea is bad. Throughout the history of time, the telephone, people said that the telephone's never going to take off because there's no shortage of messenger boys.
Okay.
But
Well,
that's
thank
a
God it
different
did. Jeez.
But the fact is that every single person can innovate, and it's not just the domain of the R&D department or product development department or senior executives or some strategy group. Whether you're in sales, marketing, distribution, packaging, whatever you are in, you can be innovative. We were talking about the iPhone. The iPhone is a great product, but the packaging of the iPhone, the box it comes in, is an innovation with 17 designers listed on the patent, including Steve Jobs. And it's the iPhone box is the one box you don't throw away. You love that box because they believe that the experience starts from when you open the box. Unlike unpacking a razor blade or a printer cartridge or a Barbie doll, which is truly a battle in getting something out. So innovation happens everywhere, no matter where you are in the organization.
Kumar Mehta, author of The Innovation Biome. Welcome to New York, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So our next guest is here for part 2 of our Bookstr segment. Alan Wolk is the co-founder and lead analyst for TV Revolution and is part of a group of veteran journalists, producers, and executives in the TV and content business. And they help people navigate the changing TV business and also help agencies, networks, and companies take advantage of disruption in TV. I have so many questions for you. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So 2 things quickly. It's TV Rev, not TV Revolution. The R is in brackets because it's both an evolution and a revolution.
Got it.
See how clever we are?
Oh, you are
And-
clever, yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
I love it. All right. This is big. This is like a hot topic right now,
Yes.
right? Because we've got all these streaming services coming up. We have all these internet things like going on that's taking away from television, Facebook
The
Live.
Olympic ratings were down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think is happening? And is this good for the consumer in the long run?
Okay, well, I'll start backwards. Yes, it's good for the consumer in the long run. What I think is happening is we're seeing an explosion of options and choices in an industry that for a really long time was a monopoly that didn't have to respond to anything consumers wanted, now has to respond. So, easy example, for a long time, the interface of most pay TV systems, what you see on the set-top box, is just awful. And it created this system that we called paying paying Nordstrom prices for Kmart service. Your cable bill would be over $100,
Yeah.
and yet the interface looked like it was designed sometime in 1997.
Probably was.
Right. Netflix came out with a much better interface. It looks a lot nicer. That was one of the reasons they took off. Hulu, Amazon have nicer interfaces. And then Comcast got the idea, we should try this too. We should actually make an interface that looked like it was designed sometime in the last 5 years. And they stopped shedding customers. They were one of the few cable companies that actually gained customers over the past few years. So I think, that's a small example, but I think overall we're seeing just a lot more innovation and a lot more, what can we do for you folks at home? So whether it's putting more stuff available on demand, making it easier to get shows, even things as simple as being able to download shows off of Netflix and Amazon so that you can watch them on the plane. Little things like that. I think that's the sort of overall thing from a consumer standpoint.
But has the cultural shift already happened? Like, I'm literally sitting here. I'm a TV person. I come from local news, and I'm a cord cutter. I mean, and let me tell you, I love news, but I'd rather, all the best clips of news are online. So whenever something's viral, I see it.
And
So
they find you. If you're meant to see it or if it's really funny, it'll find you.
we live in the world of, we can watch anything when we want.
Very much, very much. So cord cutting is not happening at anywhere near the pace that a lot of people are making it out to be. You still have all these older people in the Midwest who come home and do what they've always done, which is watch
Local
TV.
news.
Right.
Yeah.
And they watch TV they turn on the TV as background noise and they watch it for 3 or 4 hours every night. And, it's going to be 15, 20 years before that segment sort of, fades out. For younger people, it's definitely a bigger thing. People are not so much cutting the cord, we call it cord shifting, where they're moving to services like Sling, like Hulu Live TV, what they call virtual MVPDs, which is an industry term basically referring to, a cable basically pay TV that you get over the internet. And that's going to become a very big thing. So we think that because people still want to watch certain shows, they want to watch sports, they want to be able to have access to it, and for somewhere between them, and they're not, sometimes call them skinny bundles, they're not, we've been calling it where they net it out as mesomorph bundles, because it's about 80 to 100 channels at about $40 to $50 a month. So that really gives everybody pretty much anything they want in nice interfaces that you can access on your iPad, on your laptop, or off a Roku box on your TV. So that's what's happening much more. In terms of news, yeah, we're definitely seeing, much more news stuff happening off of social platforms. Although again, they're cutting, because of everything that happened during the election, Facebook is pulling big time from promoting publishers. Twitter is off in its own universe. Google is
always its own universe.
Yes. Google is doing, has actually been stepping up their game so that stuff shows up in search now through something called Google AMP. But I think that overall news is, local newscasters too are starting to come on TV. So I think overall it's going to be something that is very much on the internet because it's immediate. In other words, instead of having to wait for those 2 shows a day, it's a 24-hour cycle.
Well, and what about like the model of Netflix and HBO where you just go and watch a show you want and you get to see the whole season in like a period of 10 hours. And
Netflix and chill and binge.
yeah,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
also
Yeah.
like NBC and things like that. Like I kind of see the future where people are just subscribing to channels, like direct channels.
Yeah.
Like Netflix is a channel, HBO is a channel, instead of having to go and have a bundle of any kind.
Very much. We call it the Spotifyization of television,
Makes
which is
sense.
sort of the future. Where just like Spotify, you'll be able to go in and anything that you want. There will be channels too, because one of the interesting things that Spotify found was that although they thought that people would want to make their own playlists and do their stuff all the time, they actually like having somebody else serve it up for them, because at a certain point they're like, I don't want to deal with this. You tell me what to listen to. So the same thing with TV. You'll have channels that sort of curate stuff for you, and then you'll also be able to watch, if you want to watch every episode of Law and Order, 5 times in a row, you can do that too.
Try 10 times in a row.
Okay, 10 times in a row.
SVU at least.
Yes. It's a whole different experience without commercials too, because
Yeah.
then you go, bop, come right back.
So TV isn't going anywhere.
No, it's not. The experience of watching long-form, high-production value content is actually growing.
Yeah.
There's more options, more places to watch.
Writers are getting paid more. Shonda Rhimes just got inked like a huge deal with
Yes.
Netflix. That was like
Right.
a $300 million deal for a writer.
Right.
Heard of.
Right, and with Netflix, what's great is that, say, in the old days, if somebody wanted to hire Shonda Rhimes, they had to not hire someone else. In other words, there was a limit. You were limited by time. Because we're not limited by time now, Netflix can take Shonda Rhimes, push her shows out to people who want to see that, push documentaries out to people who want to see that,
Yeah.
push sort of riskier shows like Orange is the New Black out to a different audience, because you're not bound by any time constraints. You can have
Totally.
much more and make it much more personalized.
That's an important point, actually.
Yeah.
It's really important.
So theoretically, last question here. If you work in TV, I don't know anyone who does that.
No,
No,
what?
not at all. How do we navigate this transition?
Very carefully. No, you basically sort of have to always be thinking about what's happening, what's next, what do people want, and really keeping an eye on it and looking at the audience and where are they gravitating. And that's really going to be where everything heads. And remember that change, the old expression, change happens slowly and then all at once.
Yeah.
So you'll have some warning. It won't take you by surprise.
Well, Alan, you might get a random email from me in the future, so watch
Please
out
do.
for that one. And in the
Please do.
meantime, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you guys very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So next on the show, we have Fred Bollaci, or Bollaci, depending on how he pronounces his last name, the CEO and president of Fred Bollaci Enterprises. Fred has become known as the healthy global gourmet and will soon be releasing his book, The Restaurant Diet. Throughout the book, Fred shares his own personal weight loss story and how he kept the weight off for 7 years and never gave up eating gourmet food. I want to know your secret.
Oh, happy to share.
Absolutely. So you do pronounce it Bollaci, because I see
Bollaci.
I see a Sicilian flag from
Yep,
here.
Sicilian, Italian, Neapolitan, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm half
Nice.
Sicilian, so that's how I know how to pronounce it. Welcome to the
That's
show.
awesome. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Please incite wisdom on how I can
Tell us
eat
the
and
restaurant
drink
diet.
wine. Yeah, because I can tell you what, I gain weight so quickly the second I start eating out and drinking wine often.
That's true. It's a common problem. I hear it all the time with people that I consult with, and has also been part of my lifestyle since childhood. I grew up here in New York and came from a very food-centric Italian-American family with tons of great cooks, grandparents, my grandma, my aunts, one owned a restaurant, everybody knew how to cook, and we enjoyed the best Sunday dinners were like Thanksgiving or holidays.
Every week.
My mom, I mean, yeah, we loved to eat. And my parents, I was fortunate, loved to go out to eat here in New York City and all over the tri-state area. We ate in some wonderful restaurants. Many are still in business. Some are actually still in the book with recipes. So I grew up at an early age appreciating the finer things in life, one of which was dining out, the whole experience, the ambiance, the service, the artistic arrangement on a plate, flavors and things that you just don't get to experience typically at home, even in a wonderful food-centric family like ours. So
how do you control your weight while partaking of this wonderful smorgasbord of cuisine?
And how did you lose weight?
well, therein lies the problem and the dilemma, and the solution is in the restaurant diet. I became the chubbiest, fattest kid in my school when I was in middle school.
Oh, I was too.
And
Oh, yeah. Of course. I was the fat kid in class, of
gained
course.
and lost a lot of weight throughout the course of my life, through college and law school, and into my professional career. I topped out well over 300 pounds, at close to 330, and dining out and not making healthy choices, watching what I was doing, and not really enjoying exercise were part of the problem. I tried many diets, I mean, pretty much everything out there. I even went to a couple of renowned inpatient residential weight loss facilities here in the U.S. And first one I went to, sit down with the other inmates, as I like to call us. I mean, it was like going away to detox for somebody who loves food so much. I sit down and pick from a menu of things that I found completely unpalatable, undoable, unenjoyable. And then to the laughter of everybody else in the room, many who have been there before and are coming back because the diets don't work, and that's what the restaurant diet tells you, I ask for a wine list because I love to drink wine. I'm a sommelier, among other things, and an aficionado, and I'm like, how the heck am I going to lose weight if I can't go out to eat, I can't enjoy good food, and I can't have a glass of wine? I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, that was why I tried so many diets and probably gained and lost over 1,000 pounds in the 40 years of my life.
Wow.
So finally, I figured out that there had to be another way to do this that enabled me to enjoy the finer things in life and the pleasure of going out to eat, as opposed to sitting home, eating things that I didn't like, following some ridiculous plan. I mean, I lost weight successfully before, never anything like 100 or 150 pounds. But what happened when the diet was done? You're going to do that the rest of your life? You're going to eat things you can't stand, not drink wine, not go out to eat with your friends or coworkers?
You avoid the bread basket, don't you?
Well, the bread basket is a problem. It's not something that you have to avoid forever completely. But especially in early phases when people like me are used to eating like whatever we want, I recommend limiting or eliminating temptation when at all possible. So things like the bread basket. I mean, how many of us sit down to dinner at home and eat an entire loaf of bread before we have
Nobody. We only do that when we
butter
go
and
out.
olive oil and all the herbs and everything else? I mean, yeah, warm, crusty bread is great. I mean, Italian or French baguette, but I mean, it's not conducive to healthy living. And once you get to the point that you've lost a good amount of weight and you've employed healthy strategy to your eating, whether it's in restaurants or at home, a little bit of bread now and then isn't going to kill you, and that's what other diets don't tell you. It's okay to enjoy things. It's really the food lover's diet. It's a foodie-centric, really the foodie diet.
I love it.
My love letter to food. I mean, you can and you should be able to keep going out to eat and enjoying your favorite restaurants with the strategies in my book.
Well, and so many important conversations happen around meals. You know, so many important events in people's lives.
And around wine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and around wine
Yeah.
and champagne and all the things you know about champagne.
Some of my favorite things, yes.
But like, you can't stop. You don't want to be the person that's like, I'm on a diet, I can't partake with you guys, or like, I can't celebrate with you. It's like,
Exactly. Well, yeah, you don't want to be the party pooper ever.
yeah.
So it's better to be able to go in with a strategy than to be the only person around the water cooler in the morning who doesn't know what anybody's talking about, who doesn't go to the holiday party, who misses the family reunion or the wedding or the bar mitzvah or the whatever because you couldn't go out to eat. You had no plan, no strategy. Last time you went out to eat, you know, you suffered on this diet for how many weeks or how many months you maybe lost 5, 10, 15 pounds, and you blew it and you gained 5 pounds the last time you went out because you didn't know what to do.
What about the people who bring their own food to a restaurant or to like a family meal? That's at least it sounds like you've cooked up a strategy that allows you to not have to be so obsessive about like, oh, I can only have like 8 grams of chicken.
I'm not so much about the grams, and portion size should be reasonable. I mean, I do count calories and do recommend that. I mean, not counting calories is like writing checks without knowing what's in your account. Eventually, you could end up being overdrawn. It's not a good thing. So having some idea of what you're doing, and I know that there's diets out there that also advocate eat anything you want from column C and D, but avoid or limit A and B. And I don't advocate eating all you can eat or all you could possibly want of anything.
Well, quantity always plays a role. 100%.
Quantity
and quality.
I prefer quality to quantity. And somebody like me and the millions of us out there who have food issues or have had issues with food, overeating, eating the wrong things, not making the best choices, I don't recommend any plan that just says, eat whatever you want of these things like carrots and celery, avoid the potato chips. It's a lot more involved than that, but it should be a lot more enjoyable than that. It's really a recipe for healthy living and enjoyable living. This is
like
very
moderation
European
is the
lifestyle.
biggest thing that you're advocating.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about balance, learning to enjoy and appreciate food, make it your friend, eat to live instead of live to eat. I mean, one of my favorite activities in the world was going out to eat, followed by cooking. So I just had to be able to put that all into perspective. So in designing the restaurant diet, carrying it out, losing 150 pounds in 12 months, keeping it off, eating in good restaurants, cooking better at home, shopping better, learning to embrace exercise, I found a way to continue this so that way when the diet was done, it wasn't really done. It was a lifestyle. It was something that I had become totally accustomed to, and it seemed totally natural. To sit there, enjoy a meal, sip a glass of wine, be with friends, be with family, even be on your own, traveling on the road, and not be like that weird person who doesn't want to eat, can't eat out, and is picky, choosy, whatever. Food should be an enjoyable part of life. And then in losing the weight and getting healthier, all these other aspects of life came back, all the other things that I used to enjoy. Golf, swimming. I actually ran 4 marathons. My last one was here in New York City. I never thought I would even run a mile unless something was chasing me. I mean, it was quite an experience.
So
Did you ever? Oh,
Wait,
sorry.
we are out of time, Sarah.
I'll ask you later. I'll
So
send you an
Fred,
email.
stick around after because we have some
Yeah.
more questions for you. But Fred
Definitely.
Bollaci, author of The Restaurant Diet, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Absolutely. Shifting gears a little bit, joining us next is Mitchell Roschelle, a PwC partner and a business development leader. Mitchell has more than 3 decades of consulting experience in real estate, corporate finance, and capital markets, and also leads PwC's business development efforts across multiple sectors. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's talk real estate.
That is a tough act to follow.
Everyone likes food.
Yeah.
But everyone needs a home.
Yeah,
So let's talk about real estate.
Let's do that. So, listen, the bottom line in real estate is just not enough on the market. Right now, the existing homes that are on the market are less than 4 months supply. So if you want to buy a home, you literally can't find it. And working with my kids who are 17 and studying AP economics and teaching them supply and demand, this is basic supply and demand. There's tremendous amount of demand for homes, very little supply. So what happens? Prices go up, and that's what's going on in the housing market right now.
So what do we do?
You wait and you save because you're going to need more of a down payment. And in fact, right now, post-financial crisis, you need a down payment. And the biggest thing that changed in the last 10 years from what happened before is you actually need a down payment to buy a home.
Well, what's like the average down payment that you would need?
I'll go with the rule of thumb of 20%, right? You never get...
You can still do 3.5%
You-
with of an FHA loan
you
in
can-
certain areas.
You can do that, and I have a lot of friends and colleagues who sort of I've been advising for years about it. The reality is going through that process and actually applying and getting qualified for it is way harder than you think.
Of course.
What I don't like is people buying homes that they don't have enough equity in. Because when you really don't have a lot of skin in the game, you tend to make some really bad decisions about your home as an investment. And I'll come back to whether or not a home is an investment, because I actually don't think it is.
It isn't an
It isn't.
investment.
It's not an investment in the sense that you buy it, it appreciates in value and you sell it like any other investment. So if you,
Sometimes though.
it is, and in fact, if you look at the balance sheet of the average American, if you look at the balance sheet of the average person on the planet, okay, their home is generally their largest asset. But when you start thinking about it from an investment perspective and thinking about it in terms of getting a return, because that's what we do with investments, you end up making decisions that may be better in your investing world than in your living world, because it's something that you get utility out of. You may raise your family in it. So if you think about it long term, you're not fixing up the kitchen because you want to sell it for more money. You're fixing up the kitchen because you want to enjoy the house more. And
Well, it just depends. Like I grew up in Texas, right? So that's probably a little different scenario because you can build and sell pretty quickly at a profit. So my parents made a lot of their money through.
yeah, the interesting thing about the flipping culture, and we've all watched that network incessantly. I binge watched that and Food TV.
Yeah, me too.
But the fact of the matter is, I refer to it as economic musical chairs, right? And it works until the music stops, and then it really doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you don't want to use, I don't like to use too many business terms, but you don't want to be long homes in a down market.
Yeah.
So if you go from one to the next and next and next, it's an interesting business strategy. But I look at on that show, on those shows, I look at the look on those families' faces when the offers aren't coming in the way, and that's what happens.
Totally.
But if you think of a home as a place where you get utility, you tend to behave differently. And back to your question earlier about down payment, when you have a lot of skin in the game, I was just talking to somebody recently, and they were looking at taking out a home equity line, and they want to take their 20% equity and borrow almost all of it to continue to renovate the home. And I said, don't do that. Leave something in. And he said, why? I said, because if something happened, you lost your job, all the God forbids, the bank's going to look at you when you have no equity in that home a lot differently than you have a little bit of equity in the home. Because if you have no equity in your home, what's your incentive? And you're going to find yourself in that slippery slope of financial problems. So 20%. Well, that was a long-winded answer to your question.
So say for that example, he took 10%.
Yep.
And then he had 10% equity left.
Just leave a minimum of 10% equity in your home. The good news in that individual's home, it is appreciating in value for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. So he's creating equity, but pulling it out just for the sake of pulling it out, not a good idea.
So, but you're saying that supply is so short and that home prices will continue to surge because of a lack of supply and enormous demand.
Correct.
So we're playing both sides here. So are prices going to continue to go up?
Prices are going to continue to go up unless demand really took a nosedive. Let me just give you some numbers on demand. The last 10 years, we've created more households, and that's statistically. When a child moves out of his or her parents' home, that's statistically a household formation. We've formed 3.5 million more households than we've added to supply of homes, whether they be rental homes or for sale homes.
Doesn't that portend a good housing market for investment?
It does. The problem is there becomes a point where you've just priced people out of the market, because if they do need that 20% down and the prices just get too high and they can't afford the payments, I do worry, question you probably haven't asked yet, but I do worry about interest rates. If they creep up maybe a whole point, affordability is the biggest headwind in the housing market, and an extra point in interest rates really could start pulling some people out of the market.
Do you think that building a home, like for people that are out in the Midwest or whatever, is a good option, or is it better to just save your money and wait?
No, well, a couple of things about building is the components of what's driving up home prices in terms of the new homes that aren't being constructed. Land costs are high, so that's a big element. Lumber costs are high, and labor costs are high. My fourth L is lenders, which aren't as plentiful as they used to be. My fifth L is laws, which there are a lot of regulations.
Those are really bad. Yeah,
like
all over
a lot of regulations. But if you just go to doing it yourself, you're taking the labor cost out. Lumber's still high. And land value is still high. But if you can eliminate some of those things that are driving up the price and do it yourself, go for it.
Interesting.
So before you leave, advice for millennials, to buy or not to buy?
I'm a big fan of buying. I just saw actually somebody put on Facebook the other day, age that you bought your first home and what year it was. And it was kind of interesting. I was just watching the thread that was there. I was surprised. My generation did it a lot earlier than the millennials, but I'm a big fan of buying a home and building equity. And here's the thing I'll leave you with. If you buy a home young enough and you stay in that home forever and you have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage and you just pay off the mortgage over 30 years, the way it's supposed to be done on paper, at the end you have that home debt-free and you're entering whatever that next phase of your life is with a nest egg. You could have rented for that same period of time, paid maybe more, maybe less, but you wouldn't have that nest egg. The forced saving feature of a self-liquidating loan is probably the greatest wealth accumulator that exists in this country.
That is great advice. Mitchell Roschelle from PwC, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Our next guests are the co-founders of PathSpot, a new device that scans employees' hands to detect pathogens that cause foodborne illness in less than 2 seconds. Sounds like a great idea.
Oh, yeah, really good
I
idea.
hope I don't have anything on my hands right now.
I hope you're not serving food later.
No food right now. Christine and Dutch, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
How'd you come up with this?
We both have a background in public health and biomedical engineering, so we're always kind of looking at things in the news or in the industry that are gaps. And we both just really wanted to create something that could fill one of those gaps. So when foodborne illness was in the news all the time and we were seeing all these issues surrounding people getting really sick, even dying from contamination in their food, we decided to see if we could build something that could stop it.
Wow, that's so impressive.
Talk about innovation and food. They're tying together all the themes here. Yeah.
It always works out like that when I'm here. So what's the, like, how does it work? And what have you guys have you saved people's lives from this thing, or?
So, debatable if we've saved lives directly, but it works by using properties of light, and light reflects differently off of absolutely every surface. And so we have a custom algorithm that we use to analyze the different ways that light is reflecting off of an employee's hands to tell if there's dangerous contamination present.
Really? It has to do with light.
Yes, exactly.
So smart that you guys figured that out.
It started just because we wanted to see if we could build something that would solve it. So we went to a Radio Shack going out of business sale.
No.
And
Those were good. That was good back in the day.
we bought a bunch of components and we just tried to put something together. And once we had something that worked, we just started knocking on doors of restaurants and asking if they were interested in it.
And then the restaurants were like, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's we really design it to create a positive culture around sanitation. We want it to be something they can use to, recognize employees who are doing a really great job at upholding sanitation, and a way that they can customize trainings and really make sure that they're keeping their customers safe.
So is it basically a light that you shine on your hand?
It's more like a...
It's like a small kiosk, so about the size of a shoebox.
Okay.
But it attaches, mounts on the wall near a hand washing sink in a restaurant.
Oh,
So
okay.
smart.
After you wash your hands, you come up to it, place your hands underneath, flip them over.
Does it go beep beep if there's a problem, or what
The
happens?
screen lights up either green, you're all clear, or red, you just need to rewash. So you can do so before anyone gets sick.
So Christine and Dutch, how do you two know each other?
We went to school together. We both studied biomedical engineering, took all of our classes together, and so when we graduated, we were working on this on the side until we decided to go full-time when we realized we had something that could make an impact.
Cool. And you guys are just like looked at each other and you're like, let's start a business.
It didn't
Crazy.
start quite that easily.
We had previously worked on another nonprofit together that we had started in college, so we did know we worked pretty well together.
So a male-female team, what are the benefits of being, entrepreneurs and having both a male and female leader?
I mean, I really think that diversity of thought comes from, diversity of gender as well. And I'm a huge advocate for women in STEM education and being able to encourage females to go into engineering, which obviously is a pretty male-dominated field, as is entrepreneurship. So, it's really fun to be able to work together because we're able to tackle that issue as well as be able to learn from each other and play to each other's strengths in different scenarios. There's going to be some situations where I'm better at approaching a problem and others where Dutch is, sometimes because of our gender and sometimes just because of the way we solve problems.
Yeah. Are you guys currently fundraising or are you trying to build this yourselves, or what's your business model?
Eventually, we will be looking at fundraising opportunities, but right now we're just trying to get it into as many locations as possible so that we can prove out the model and show people that they can use this to really make an impact.
Don't sales really, like if you sell to one chain, there's so many franchises in the country, isn't that be a huge win for you guys?
It's definitely true with the largest of chains, that there are so many franchises, but it's actually 70% of restaurant locations are, single or much smaller locations. So it's really across the U.S. It's a very fragmented space with a lot of.
But let's go with the obvious elephant in the room, Chipotle, a place I love, but I worry about getting sick at every time I go, and everyone in my office tells me you're spinning the wheel. But I really do like it. I really think they have a good product. They have a food-borne pathogen problem. Wouldn't they benefit from your product?
Yeah, exactly. Our product we try to make it so that it fits within all workflows. It only takes 2 seconds. After someone washes their hands, they can put them right underneath, see if they have any contamination. So in theory, we'd be able to solve all of those instances that come from people just not fully washing their hands. Not because they don't know that there's, something on their hands. If you knew you had a problem, you would obviously wash a little harder. But, you just don't know that you need to wash your hands for a full 30 seconds. That's singing happy birthday all the way through twice. How often do you do that?
How common is it to have like something on your hands that is not, that's
Yeah, it's
Overall,
incredibly common.
In our initial, installations that we've worked with, we see like an average overall of like a 1% fail rate across.
That's
across
it?
scans. Yeah, so not super common, but if you think about 1% and how many people,
Yeah, that's a lot
how
actually.
many times you're touching things, it's still a significant number of times.
1 out of 100,
1 out of 100.
Kind of gross.
Wouldn't the new CEO? I hate to go back to Chipotle because I'm a huge fan, but the new CEO of Chipotle actually came from Taco Bell, and he's a turnaround specialist. Isn't something like this like? Shouldn't you be like emailing him and knocking down his door?
For sure. And then they need to put out a big press release that says that they have your product now. It's okay to eat there.
Like that aircraft carrier in Iraq that said "Mission accomplished," but a good version of that.
We definitely think that everyone needs something beyond the signs that say employees must wash hands before returning to work.
Totally.
In the technology age that we're in right now, it seems like that's a little bit out of date.
I'm such a germaphobe. Like every time I see that when I go to the restaurant, I'm just like, ew. Ew. Like it just never.
Reality, Sarah. What are you
You
gonna
know,
do?
I know people don't wash their hands and then they go make you a sandwich. Like that just is gross.
Well, now they can use our product.
1 out of 100 sandwiches that you eat. That's
Whatever.
disgusting.
I'm alive. So, Christine and Dutch, before we leave you, because we're running over and we're out of time here, what advice do you have for millennials who want to start a business? Or for anyone, for that matter?
Yeah, I think it's really just about taking the time to go and do it. If you have the opportunity and you have the freedom and you have the knowledge, it's almost like a responsibility to be able to take that and, use the gifts that you've been given to be able to make an impact in the space.
You agree, Dutch?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a time in your life where there's so many positions you can be in your life that you do have a lot that would be at stake and a lot that would be at risk. And if you feel like you're in a situation now where you might be able to do it, it's probably not going to get easier. So go ahead and try.
Dutch and Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
much.
Congrats to you both.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting with me.
Of course, it's been so much fun.
It's been so much fun. That does it for here at Bold Business. We'd like to take a moment to thank our hardworking team at Bookstr, who's this lady,
Thank you.
Bold TV, and GenFKD, who all help make this show happen every week. Don't forget to catch Bold Business right here next Tuesday at 9 a.m. I will not be here. I will be in Florida, wandering my
living it
native
up.
lands.
Getting a tan.
And we'll have a whole new lineup of guests. You can also catch some familiar faces on Friday. Carrie Sheffield, Clay Aiken at 10 a.m., as well as another great episode of Bold Life at noon on Friday. We'll see you soon.